My son enjoyed it and wanted to join the club. So we joined the local club, and that was a very different experience. It was very structured, very formal, all about teams. Even at under 9s, under 10s aged kids were being selected for teams and being left out. And it was kind of like turn up on a Saturday and see if you were good enough for Sunday. And I just thought, what is going on here? And the level of direction and shouting at the kids in matches just really put me off, because it seemed to me to be the antithesis really of how you develop and create passion and the love for the game really with children, and create a really good environment so that you can get creative players. So I thought about it, talked to different people, and eventually set up Salisbury Rovers, as I say, 5 years ago. And our focus, as you briefly mentioned, is really about child-centred practice. And so our kids lead the play. We've got about 100 kids at the club, but we also do community projects. We work in areas of socioeconomic disadvantage. We also do disability football. We support girls futsal with another club as well. But everything that we do is led by the kids really, and what they want out of the game. A good example of that is just last year we set up an under 16s separate one team club, because the older boys at our club wanted to create a team for themselves. They wanted to rebrand themselves, and they did. They came up with the name, they designed the badge, they're on the committee, they've organised a tournament this summer for themselves. I just do what I'm told and do the jobs for them as well as coaching. But that's how I got involved really, because I just felt, that things could be better, and that led me, more and more to get on the front line really in terms of coaching.
I didn't have the opportunity growing up to actually really engage in sport of any kind. I had a strong interest in football and rugby, but my parents were very old school, and it was girls don't do that. So I was dissuaded heavily. And I didn't mean anything by it, they just really were old school in the way they thought. But I've always followed football. I always really enjoyed watching it. And still rugby really as well, but more football. And then I have 4 children. The youngest is now 9. And when he was 4, I got really interested in friends of the boy who had a team at school. So he was nagging, I wanted to play football. Now, my other children can't see hockey at all, not interested, not remotely. So it was a bit of a fresh air for me to have one that actually was. So an old school friend of mine has a football academy that he did on Saturday morning. It was no pressure. It was all about ball association.
My nation is a cricket-loving nation, but when I saw that there is a scholarship opportunity available, I asked myself, why not? Because I always wanted to play, right? And I grew up in a rather reserved community. So there's like a lots of do's and don'ts for boys and girls. So one of the don'ts of being a girl is that don't play. So I signed up there. I was only girl who signed up. It was quite a revelation for me, because most of the colleagues that I had when I went through my level 1 coaching, most of them are male, and they always played, and they were like so good. So I was asking myself, can I do it? Can I not do it? But I wasn't the one to give up. I thought like maybe if I try, work hard, get fit, and then keep training, I will get better.
My favourite part has to be the fact that I don't get hurt. The fact that I can go and
hopefully not. That's some session you're getting hurt as the coach.
It's gone really wrong if I get hurt. But it's given me a sort of a way to be in the game that isn't dependent on myself, in that other people are dependent on me, and I kind of enjoy that sort of responsibility side of it. Having every Sunday 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock out with the girls first thing in the morning, it's definitely after the last year, it's something I've missed, and it's something that is the highlight of the week, because you never know what they're going to do. You never know what's coming at you on that Sunday morning or the Friday night with training as well. You don't know what pearl of wisdom is going to come out of the 13-year-old's mouth at this time. So it's that kind of unknown and that sort of engaging with people that really sort of makes me love it.
the main bit of coaching started for me when I got to college, and I was at a football college, and just before I was going into my second year, I picked up an injury and I couldn't play. But obviously the rest of the team's training every day, and I wanted to be involved, so I started doing bits of coaching, and then that was when I got involved with the foundation. So I actually started as a volunteer on their volunteer programme, and then so that was back in 2016, and since then I've worked my way up and I'm now in a full-time role. I also work in grassroots football as well, so I work for a local club, but then we also have an expansion that I run, which is the girls' side of it. So gradually we've sort of built that up, and it is getting quite big now.
I think for most young girls, it kind of takes off from having a brother and a dad who are very much football mad, and that was me. And I didn't really have a female role model for a long period in terms of football, and that kind of, I guess, was quite noticeable. Probably now I notice it more than when I was a kid. I kind of just grew up just thinking I was a male coach, and I didn't really notice the lack of female coaches around. And it wasn't really until I got kind of into football and playing at a higher level that I really noticed the first female coach. And she was in with the England under, I think, 19s at the time, which was Mo Marley. And she was kind of that first female coach that I saw. But before that, I had a lot of very, very good male coaches who had a very supportive side towards female football, and they understood it. But it was kind of really in its very early days of women's football and coming through. It's nothing like that you would see now in terms of the WSL and the likes of Emma Hayes and Hope Powell coming into the WSL. So it wasn't really until later on that I started seeing those female role models. And I think that was really kind of, it's surprising, but also had a really positive impact because they were in full-time positions, and you just kind of wanted to be in that experience and have that opportunity, I suppose.
I just got that bug, that thirst for knowledge. I just wanted to know more. And like Leah said, I didn't want to do a disservice to the girls. I wanted to give them the best version of me. And I just became really driven in terms of getting out there and getting the knowledge. So I kind of went through the different courses. But for my daughter Megan, the part of the drive was that pathway. I wanted to give the opportunity to all Megan's teammates. We had this explosion of girls, so I ended up overseeing 4 age groups at one point, and then crazily decided I was going to take her start a women's team for her to progress into. So that's I created Pathway Women's. Wasn't just satisfied with one team, decided I wanted a reserve team as well. So was competing against Emily's team at Ossett at some point. She was quite a bit higher than us in terms of the leagues, but it was a really good challenge to go against some of the really good teams. So I think that's where the UEFA B came in. As soon as I knew I was getting into adult football, I needed that. I knew I needed to expand my knowledge an awful lot.
What is it that you love most about your role?
I think it's really just linking in with education as well, just having such an impact on players, that their development throughout the years that they're under your kind of coaching, and the ability to challenge players and stretch them as much as you can, and seeing how that really impacts them as a player and as an individual. I just see that as kind of real value.
It's all about the players. So what do they want? What do they need? Can I provide that as a coach? Because for me, sometimes there could be coaches that's all about an ego. It's all about, the end of the result on a Sunday. But for me, because I've got such an age group where they're going to drop out if they are not currently playing. And also it's a real stressful time with GCSEs. So football has to be fun. I know we keep saying that, but it has to be fun and it has to be for them. So I always ask them, what do you want from me? Because I'm here for you guys. I'm not here for myself. So you tell me how you want that. And actually you get player involvement, you get player ownership. Right, this is why, and have discussions rather than saying we play this way because I support Chelsea, so we're going to play with 2 holding midfielders. I actually ask the players, have involvement. They feel engaged, and that they're actually, the attendance on Tuesday nights are a lot higher because I've involved them rather than talking to them. I'm not a teacher. They're doing this out of school time, so it's not like they have to do it compulsory. Sometimes there are parents that are quickly, you have to go to the sessions and stuff. So for me, it's players.
I think the skills are so transferable there. There's a lot of similarities. Yes, there is a lot of differences between coaching and teaching, but certainly in terms of communication, you know, as a teacher, you have to stand in front of a class of 25, 30 people every day, and those are the kind of things that you take for granted, because it's just automatic. You just have to walk into the class and you're just presenting, I suppose. So that's one thing. And you know, things like behavior management, control of the class, and then control of your team. So you know, there's a lot of similarities that way. And to go back to your question, Joe, about qualities, I think you know, there's a lot of differences between female and male coaches, but I think for me personally, you know, in terms of communication, I don't have that loud voice, you know, that some male coaches might be able to bring. And you know, I don't have that big booming shouting voice that you can hear across the other side of the pitch. So for me, you know, I have to find different ways to be able to communicate and to be able to interact with my players. And I think that comes from building relationships with them. Again, that's a similarity with teaching, building the relationship with your students so that you can, you know, get the best out of them.
If I could give one tip to people, it would be to focus on the relationships that you've got with the people in front of you. So I think for me, the biggest, the most daunting thing, it was great to watch other coaches. It was fantastic and learn from them. But we do have coaching as this big performance sport sometimes, so that we've got this usually male figure who's holding forth and keeping control and dominating everything and giving instructions out. And actually, that's not the only way to coach. And what I found is that we can all develop our own way of coaching, actually. And that for me, the strength, my strength would be connecting with individuals. And it's a much more low profile, quieter way of doing things. And it took me a long time to see that that was coaching too, actually, because the vision that we've got of what a coach is very different. So I would say don't be put off if you don't feel comfortable doing what you see others do, because find your own strengths.
My actual degree was in psychology and sport, so I've been looking a lot at the psychological and social side. So we don't just do football, we've taken them out places like to the theatre, just getting them socialising, the cinema and stuff like that. So it's that's some of the stuff that we've been doing extra other than just the actual football as well. So I think that really helps, because the social side is very important, I think. I think it gets forgotten about a lot in actual football, but probably in most sports, to be fair. So yeah, I've been looking at more the social and psychological side within sessions as well.
It's always been a big part of what I try to do with my players. I think if you can be an approachable coach, then you can kind of handle any conflict. You can approach players about individual development. And I think players really, really appreciate that. So not only does it develop them as a player, the entire team. So I think that's really, really valuable for a coach, to be really, really good at managing different individuals, different people, and what they need from you. So trying to understand them.
I think for me, in terms of my journey, a lot of it was about being bold and brave, and really putting myself out there. I think as a female coach of girls, particularly when I was starting my journey, you know, I used to think that maybe people were criticising what I was doing because you were getting all these opinions sort of thrown at you. You should be doing it this way or that way. So I think, you know, one of the biggest qualities is self-belief and believing in yourself and understanding what you're doing, and so that your players know and believe in your philosophy. It took me a long time to realise, actually, that there weren't criticisms. It's just football is a sport of opinions, and everybody's got their opinion in doing that. And, you know, understanding that, you know, if you believe in yourself and you believe what you're doing, then you can take on those comments and sort of reflect and add them into what you're doing if you want to, but if you don't, then you don't have to.
I didn't really play until I was about 15, 16, and that was more by chance than anything else. Like, I'd played at school and stuff, and then a friend said, "I'm going, are you coming?" Which I think is the start point for a lot of people. But I think initially, in terms of my coaching, my enthusiasm for the game was the biggest thing that almost not inspired me to coach, but that was the start point. I didn't really pay much attention to who was around me at that point. I was doing it because I loved football. This was a way to be in football that I could do, she says, confidence. But it was kind of only as I got further into sort of not just coaching but working in football development as well, that I started to sort of pick people up, and now I look at the game and the people that sort of inspire me are, yes, the people up in the WSL, Emma, Hayes, and people like that, but also I look at the girls that are doing D&V at the club who are helping out with the younger age groups. I've got 5 of mine with the younger age groups in the hour after, and I just think, well, that's fantastic. That's something that I would never have done as a 14, 15, 16-year-old, because my confidence wasn't there, but they've got the sort of belief in themselves to go and do it. And I think that's kind of where sort of I've got to is finding the inspiration in sort of individuals around me now, rather than sort of having the one focus point.
At university, I wanted to go to America and take part in a soccer camp. And I approached my lecturer and asked him a bit more information about it, and he kind of stopped midway and was like, "You know what? It's a bit too laddish. Like, you don't want to be doing that. It's a bit, that football stuff is a bit too laddish." So, I think it's just been those kind of those little comments along the way, and I suppose it's kind of driven me to prove them wrong almost. I can do the talking with my feet as a player. I can get involved with coaching and just show that I'm as good as the next person, I suppose.
What we've got to do is get away from any kind of stereotype that's tied to any kind of particular characteristic of a group, whether that be disability, race or gender or anything else. So we've got to see ourselves as individuals, and that we all bring different things to coaching. That's whether we're male or female. And so for me, the idea of equality is that we don't talk about gender anymore because it's not an issue. The idea of, equality in terms of race is that we don't talk about people's colour anymore because it's not an issue, just being as a female. And that like sums it all up, really, for me. The experiences that I've had sometimes, and there's lots of positive things, and I'm sure we'll go into this in more detail, but that's your starting point. You're just seen as a female, and then you've got to be seen as a coach. And men don't have that step up, really, because it's assumed if you're male and you're coaching, you're a coach. But we are primarily seen as females, and then have to prove ourselves as coaches or players.
It sort of replicates society, where certain roles we still clarify that females do that and males do that as well. Why I'm just bored of it. So sometimes you do have to, sometimes I feel like I have to have a thick skin, because sometimes it can lead to, going off topic, banter, which sometimes I can find quite offensive. But having the courage to actually challenge it and go, you shouldn't be saying that.
What's the best tip that you could give to any person? Might be a female young leader or a female player on this call this evening who's in the under 17s, or might be working with the 19s, or maybe a mum starting to get coaching. What's the best tip that you could give to that person, whether that they might be a little bit undecided on whether to coach or not at the minute? What's the best tip that you could give them, really, in terms of they're on this call now? What's gonna keep them in the game? Anyone?
I'd say if there's a few doubts in your mind, it's probably is it right for me? Is coaching right for me? And I think sometimes that comes down to feeling a little bit vulnerable, feeling like you don't know enough about it yet. I think that was probably the question marks above my head when I was 17, working out whether or not I wanted to do the level 1. So my advice would be that vulnerability slowly starts to slip away the more knowledge that you take on. So take that first step. I think Michelle alluded to it earlier. I think there was gaps in Michelle's knowledge. She went out there and had a thirst to go and make sure she learned from that. Went and found the bits that she wanted to get, and then she felt more confident in those areas. And there were parts of her coaching that she already felt confident in. So she felt quite powerful in those positions. So I think it's the vulnerability that I think puts people off. But I think you've got to be bold. We've mentioned this word so much tonight, but you have to be a little bit brave sometimes. And I think if you can take that first step, slowly start to push that vulnerability away, then you'll just keep on building. And like Suey said, there's UEFA A licence candidates that still feel a little bit of vulnerability when they're with people on the UEFA A, because big fish, small pond, we've all been there. There's different times for everybody. So I think you'll go at your own pace, but you will feel a little bit more confident with every bit of knowledge that you take on. So that would be my advice. Just be bold.
So when I moved to England and when I did my level 1 certification, I mean, getting started was always tough because of COVID. But I think the biggest obstacle for me was, that fear inside me of not knowing enough about football. What if I'm not good enough? What if I make a fool out of myself when I go out there? But I think once you're on that road, it gets easier because it's a work in progress. I'm much more confident when I started back in September. I have a really great team. I have a really great coach who treats me very well. The parents are really nice. So I think that fear is much reduced now. And I'm working to increase my knowledge about football. So I know I can get there. So I'm more confident now. We always second guess ourselves, and we think that we somehow have some of us have imposter syndrome. So from my workplace, one of my senior colleagues who was talking about it, and he said when I was in my early career, I was doing the same job as a man, and I was wondering whether I would ask for a pay rise, but she was always second guessing herself. Do I deserve it? But a male person who usually they don't do that, right? So in terms of asking for help, getting involved in a club, always reach out to the club welfare officer or try to use your common network. Somebody who knows somebody who's involved in that kind of thing you want to do.
We've done some research lately about, why aren't women involved in the club? And we did it with one club, it wasn't done in the South actually, but just to give us an idea. And a lot of the women said the reason they weren't involved in coaching at the club is because they'd never been asked. And, and I was like, really, is that it? And then I did a little, I called it Stepping Over the Sidelines workshop the other night, where I spoke to several mums who had daughters who played in various teams in a club to try, and actually they weren't averse to not getting involved and supporting and, being that female role model. So I think sometimes it's just let's ask and make sure that we've got everything in place that creates the environment that people like Carol and Yasmin are doing in their club, so that females want to be part of it. They want to contribute, and they're really quite passionate, and it's not just females coaching female teams. A lot of our female coaches coach the boys teams as well, and that's a really important role as well, because we really want our young boys growing up seeing females in these empowering positions, because that's how you change mindset. It's through education. So if we're going to change the mindset, it's not just females we have to give them and make them feel more confident. It's also about ensuring that the young boys who are growing up think it's natural to have a girl wanting to play alongside them, so that they support each other through that journey, whether it's the player pathway, coach pathway, or whatever.